I'm a violinist and a percussionist. Don't ask me about key signatures. I mean, I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm doing with music programs or computers, but I managed it. So I'm sure you can if you would like to as well. Hello, welcome. I'm Taka, and this is going to be a little tutorial on how to make sampled sounds into synthesizers using Grace, which is a sampler by One Small Clue. It is a fantastic sampler if you're looking into getting into sampling and don't know where to start. Grace is great because it's free, and honestly, okay, I'll be real, I've never used a sampler that I've ever paid for, so I don't know if there's any better ones out there. Probably there are, but for what I do, it's great. So why pay money when there's a fantastic free one that you can use? Anyway, so first of all, what I've got here, I've opened my project. I'm using Traction Waveform if anybody's interested. Again, also free. Very good. Recommend. And I've got a MIDI file right here, so I've literally copied this over from another track that I've abandoned. So that's why I'm using this little bit. But obviously, we haven't got any sound to play it from. So at the moment, if I play it, it's not going to do anything because the program hasn't got any instrument to play it with, basically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get Grace up. Now, if you don't know already, this is a VST plugin. So the way that you need to have this on your computer is if you go into program files. Off the top of my head, I have no idea what they would be. Let's find out. Here we go. Found it. I'm a genius. So in your program files, I've made this folder. So that wasn't there before. I made that. And in it, it's just got any plugins that I've got. So this is my 8-bit plugin. This is a really cool plugin by David Hillowitz, if anybody knows that guy. He is awesome for sampling. If you want to know about sampling, look at his channel. He's awesome. But here's Grace. So basically, if you have a VST plugin folder, usually your DAW, which is the digital audio workspace, which is what Traction Waveform is, the DAW that you have usually is pretty good at finding folders that say VST plugin. So then if you have a plugin, download it, stick it in that folder, then get your program to search for plugins, then usually it will find it and it will be able to load it.
Hiya guys, Future Techer here. I decided that actually I would be super clear about how to get Grace onto your computer, because I have been that guy who has been watching a how-to video and gone, how did you get to that point though? Because somebody just jumped ahead and presumed a few things are obvious. So just for the sake of being an extra dummies guide, here we go. So I've just searched Grace One Small Clue in Google, and it's literally here. And you can download it from here. So you can collect one of those. I think I went with the 64-bit. And then it's up in your downloads. Then you just got to click on it, go through all the wizard options, and it will set things up. And then when you've saved the files, you need to make sure you're saving it into this VST plugin folder that you've already made. To be honest, if you really, really want to know all the details of the process of this, then I would just recommend looking up the videos that I'm sure I looked up when I did this myself, which is showing how to do it. And then once you've done that, you need to head into your settings if you're using something like Traction Waveform, and then you'll see there's a tab called plugins here, and when you click that, you can see it's found all of my plugins. I don't know why I've got that one twice. That's fun. But yeah, anyway, the point is that they're all here, and you can see it says scanning for plugins. So usually it's pretty good at figuring out itself when there's a new plugin, but you can do it manually. The reason for that is because it's automatically checked for new plugins. So if that's not ticked, maybe you should tick that. But then you can scan for new, VST3 or VST, whichever. I don't honestly know the difference. Again, ask somebody who actually knows this stuff. I'm just vibing, man. And then once you've got it, I believe it's pretty good at showing you here. It's got all of the different racks you can have. So there we go. That's all my plugins and your recent ones too. So yeah.
Now, as it is at the moment, we've got the plugin open, hooray, but no sample. So your samples need to be the right format. I think, if I remember correctly, it needs to be a WAV file. But let me double check what I've saved everything as. WAV, yes. So, chainsaw in G sharp. I hope everybody enjoys that. The reason that I've got what note they're in is because when we drag our sampler into the sample, when we drag our sample into the sampler, we need to know what note it is. Now, I suppose you don't really need to, but if you're trying to write music, like melodic music, the way I do, and you want it to be, like if you decide you change your mind on one instrument and you want to drag that part down to a different instrument, it's really, really helpful if they're all in the same key. Now, anyone who's a classical musician will know about like transposition, and like if you're a French horn player, then your instrument's in a different key to the violins. And if you're a clarinet, I think, maybe, or oboe, one of those two is, or maybe both of them, I don't know. The point is that if you know what note your sample is, or at least roughly, I'll get into quarter tones and semitones later, don't worry about it. But if you know roughly what note it is, then it means that it makes it so much easier to switch between parts, to tune everything and all that. So let's go with the radio squeak, which I have shown a million times. Here we go. So once you click back through, it will show the sample. Now, I know that I want to start the sample from here because I've used this sample a million times, and I know that the start of the sample is really scratchy and noisy, and I don't like it. The tone clears up about halfway through, so we're starting here. And I know that this is in E flat because I told myself so. So everybody brace yourselves. There we go. So I've stuck it to E flat, and I know it's really high up, so I'm gonna stick it there. So and now it's as easy as that. That's it. Now you can just do everything like that, or you can then change some of the settings. So we've got attack, decay, sustain, and release. This is your filter envelope. Attack just means if you imagine the note that you're playing, how long does it take to get to the loudest point of the note? Imagine a triangle. Like if you hit a triangle, you can tell I'm a percussionist, but imagine if you hit a triangle, it has that really loud attack when you hit the triangle, and then the note rings on and then gradually fades away. If you reversed that sound, it would go really, really slowly building up to then it hitting the loudest point of the note. So if you wanted to have a pad synth, for example, which has this really nice wah before you get to the loud part of the note, that's got a low attack. But if you want it to go ba, 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 that's got a short attack. So let's say I want this to have the note clearly at the start of the note, so I'm going to have the attack down really low. However, the question then is, so when I press the note down, when I let go, do I want it to stop straight away? Usually my answer is no, because I like ambience. So that's when you have the release. So the release is here, and you're going to turn it up if you want that note to hang on for longer. So now it should be, see, I've let go of the note and it's ringing on a bit. I think it just gives it a nicer sound, personally. But sometimes when you're doing stuff like 8-bit, you want the release to be downright low, because in 8-bit, it's just a completely different style. So that said, you can put the release up on 8-bit, as I have done before, and that's an interesting effect too. Now, decay and sustain. Don't ask me what the H is, by the way. I have no clue. We just vibe here. I have no idea what I'm doing. Why are you listening to me? But the decay is, can you see when I'm holding over this, it's got this like, I wish I could show you with the mouse, but I can't, because then it will disappear. It's like it's quantum locked or something. But you've got the filter envelope going all the way up, and then the graph goes right down again, and then it goes up the top. So that first little bit, that's the attack. And then the decay, you can see, as I change this, it changes it. So that's how long it takes to get from the loudest point of a note to the sustain level. And the sustain level is how loud it is when it's at that. So you press the note, you get the attack, loudest point of the note, and then how long does it take to get to the level of volume that it will stay at for as long as you're holding the note down. And then after you've let go, the release is how long it takes to get from the sustain level to silence. So between those different things, you can do lots of different effects. So let's see how she's sounding. Okay, it's good. Now, I could, if I wanted to, add extra reverb onto this. I mean, you can do anything you like once you've got the sample there. Let's go with natural reverb and echo caverns, because that's my go-to, unless I want everything to be really, really echoey and reverby, in which case I go with plate reverb. There you go. Just add some nice stuff to it. Now, my trick is if I've got actually, when I first started and I had a bunch of samples that were really short, like, for example, let's change this up a bit. Let's do this guy. I love this sample because it's got a really interesting quality to it, because it's basically, I just blew over a glass bottle. So it has this really nice breathy attack at the start, which is very cool and percussive. Now he starts on, there you go. Now he starts on an A, and he's quite low down, so. Now, unfortunately, if I turn the reverb off especially, it'll be really obvious. This one, because it's such a short sample, see, can you hear? That sounds like a child's toy. That's really funny. Okay, I'll put that one down. I'm going to put him up an octave, actually. So you can mess around with like the octaves by there we go. So there you go. So now it's down an octave. You could also just change the MIDI to make it a different octave, but sometimes I mess around with it depending on what I'm doing. But if I put this back on again, it's not as bad. However, so, okay, when I first started, I used to just use the reverb to mask the fact that the samples weren't very long. But unfortunately, with the bottle, I would just do a really fast pattern. So it'd be like ba 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 ba, rather than having the long notes on the bottle, because otherwise it just was really obvious that it was a really short sample. However, I have now learned the magic of loops. Because I was like, wouldn't it be great if I could just loop that little bit? And I can. Turns out, because Grace is amazing. So you've got several things. So one shot, actually, I don't even know what one shot is, because I imagine it would be the same as just what it is normally. But anyway, no loop is what I have as my standard. But you could also have loop continuous or loop until release. I tend to go with loop continuous, and the reason for that is because otherwise, if you do loop until release, you're gonna choose a section to loop. When you release the note, it will just go into the release. And if you have a really short sample, it's just going to cut off dead. So then you won't get that nice tail with your release, which is the whole reason to have release. So, but here we go. We've got our little guys. And I'm going to put them here. Now, the thing with Grace is if you press Control and zoom in, you can see the sample a bit better. Ooh. And so you can see... I think when I try and loop things, I try and make it so that it's got like the same volume at the end and the start of the loop. Otherwise, it's going to be really obvious when it's looping itself, because it's going to go wow, 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 rather than wah. In this case, with the bottle, it does sound a bit more like it's got vibrato, which may not be a bad thing. Depends on your taste. But let's listen to it now. Much better, see? And literally, you can see what's going on. It's just looping that middle section. And if I change, so I was just changing a few things there, and you could see how it was like, well, you could hear how it was affecting the sound. Now, I could also take these up a notch. So that's just the attack. So it's just making a slightly slower attack. And you can hear how it's like lost its bat at the start. You can really hear it there. So if you want to have like a lead sound with like a much softer approach, then definitely possible. I do that every now and then. If I have a sound that I don't want to be too aggressive, then I'll soften it very slightly. But then you can also have a pad. So let's say, so when I say pad, I mean a synth with like, that's usually for chords, a sort of slow attack. So I'm going to get rid of this sample. Yes, go away. And what shall we have? Let's go with my tap, because then I can show you how to do low pass filters as well. Right, I'm going to change this to no loop. There we go. And I'm going to start the sample here. And then, so one thing with Grace is that sometimes it doesn't show all the buttons when you've opened it straight away. So when you put a new sample in. So now I can see all the buttons. So I can put the volume up of this guy because it's a very quiet sample. You could also do this with gain, but it works slightly differently. So it might change the quality of the sounds. Just, listen and see what you prefer, but you can do that. And pan is to do with like which earphone it's coming through, which side. I barely touch pan. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, so we've got this sound. Oh, actually, I'll put it in the right key first. That would be helpful. Already sounding good. However, this tap, you can hear it. It's got the drip, drip, drip of the tap, which is a higher frequency sound than the tap sample. I talked about this in my last video, but let's get rid of that. So, low pass filter. So I'm only letting the lower frequencies pass through the sound. But that makes a nice... very nice. However, let's do something different. So I'm just going to put in another guy. I think these notes are actually not going to work. Now I'm thinking about it. They're probably going to be out of tune as well. So they are horrendously out of tune. Screw this. I'm going to cheat. We're cheating everybody. Okay. Sorry. I realised I had made a mess of everything, so I fixed everything up. And what I've done is I've put the original melody that we had, melody-ish, into back onto the radio squeak, and I've got the a part that would be for a pad, so it's just chords. So if you have a look at the difference, they're very similar, but it's got a little bit less movement in it, which is great for a pad with slow attack, because otherwise you're going to lose all the movement anyway, because if it takes so long for the note to get to the loudest point, you don't really hear it. So we've got our tap, which we've put in. I've put the attack up, and I'm going to mute this simply because I already know that these two synthesizers are not in tune with each other. But just to show you the attack first. There you go. And to really show you the difference, what I'll do is I'll put this guy down. There you go. Which also sounds nice, to be fair, but it's nice to have this pad as well. And you can really go to town with this. I've had it where I've had the attack way up, and it's really cool because you just get this rising note coming in the background. It just gives the piece a nice sense of movement and not everything being the same, Anyway, let's listen to this. I know this is out of tune. This is the problem with using samples, because if you played even if you play instruments, they can be out of tune with each other, but people are usually pretty good at putting them in tune with each other. Well, I say that. I played an orchestra and they're not very good at putting everything in tune. Bless their hearts, they're fantastic. I love them. However, when you're writing electronic music, tuning is never a problem. But here it is, because I've said, look at my sample pack. The radio squeak is in E flat. The tap is in F sharp, but it's not. It's the closest note I could get to whatever that was. So therefore, I need to tune it. So I'm going to tune everything to the radio squeak. Okay. So. Beautiful. So what I've done is I've just used the fine tune. So anyone who knows music theory might have heard of tones and semitones. So a semitone, if I look at this guy, the semitone is the distance between these two notes or these two notes. So two adjacent notes. So this is a tone and this is a semitone. However, there are notes in between those two notes, and those are quarter tones and centitones. So there's like 100 notes. Actually, there's probably infinity notes because it's a sliding scale, but for ease, let's call them centitones. And this dial here, you can see at the top, it says fine 50 cent, and that's centitones. This guy is in semitones. So this is a much more of a, if you imagine like anyone who plays violin, you've got the tuning pegs at the top and the little adjusters at the bottom. The tune peg so the tune dial is like the tuning pegs, which are like big. If you want to make a big change to your sound, you use that. If you want a very fine adjustment, you use the adjusters at the bottom. Exactly the same principle here. Sorry if nobody's a violinist, but I am. So then you get all of this. And then it's in tune with each other. And I'll be fiddling with these for ages in case because sometimes you bring a new instrument in and it sounds off and you're just like, Funny story, one time I got my friend to sing I just got her to sing a note that I could use as a sample for one of my pieces of music that I was writing. And she sang, I said, can you sing me an E and then a G? So like a normal person, she went to get an online piano and sang an E and a G, but then it was out of tune with my music. So I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to send you a note because this is like a few centitones out. And she was like, I can't even hear it. And then I like played it to her. It was like with one synth you could get away with it, but the other one you really couldn't. And it was because I hadn't quite got them exactly right either. So it showed me up for not having the tuning right. Anyway, that gives you a sense of what I do. And then after that, it's just the same principle for everything. And you can mess about. I mean, there are buttons that I have not pressed in here that I'm sure do exciting things. So one day I'll figure out all of those. But I feel like with most things like this, you can just have fun and see what happens. But anyway, hope that was helpful. And if anyone's interested in more stuff like this, I think I may do some more. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything you'd like me to explain in particular. I'm thinking of doing a video about like particular synths and how they sound completely different in different contexts. So like the gate that I use, the squeaky gate, is really fun to see how different it sounds depending on what you're doing with it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and take care of yourselves.